Hi, and welcome to Matt Holman Talks Mental Health, the podcast where I have the opportunity to sit down and chat to somebody who I've known through my life, through friendships, through the work that I do, or through the world that I've traveled. Today, I have the wonderful pleasure of introducing Adam Jones to this conversation. Welcome, Adam.
Hi, Matt.
Hello. And what I will always do in these is I will introduce Adam as I know him, and then I'll ask you, Adam, to introduce yourself, please, to the people that are listening today. So Adam, or as I know him as AJ, is somebody who I actually went to school with. And this was a long time ago, of course, as you can probably tell if you're watching. I am in my mid-40s, as is AJ, I'm sorry to say it. But we met back in secondary school. So we actually probably last spoke and last saw each other around about 1991. So we're working out probably about 30 years ago. So I don't really know that much about Adam's life since we left school. I could tell you all these wonderful anecdotal stories about school, but I don't think that's what this podcast is all about. He was a popular guy at school. He was one of my community of friends or group of friends that lived out in the village just outside of the town that I lived in. We tended to spend a lot of time playing sports, football, and things like that when I was allowed to. And and I always remember AJ, as I'll call him AJ, as a very avid rugby player, and that was probably the one thing that stood out in my mind was you represented Wales at youth level, or I'm not sure which levels you got to, but I know you were an avid rugby player, and I always recall a story of you scoring a try that was about 90 meters, maybe, whole length of a pitch. It's a memory that's come flooding back. Was that right?
It gets longer every time I tell that story.
Well, I'll let you tell that story.
Be longer than the pitch itself, so.
Well, there you go. Yeah, from the stands at both ends. So it's just fantastic. And just a week or so ago, I reached out. I found Adam on LinkedIn. We haven't spoken for such a long time, and it's just great to have you. So welcome. Would you like to do your introduction now?
Yeah, thank you, Matt. And look, it's great to be speaking with you after all this time, and on this topic as well. Who'd have thought it? 30 years ago that we'd have reconnected and be kind of sharing some of our war stories, let's say. But since leaving school and going to university, I did sort of carry on the rugby thing. So I played rugby professionally, which is a fantastic time of my life that I look back very, very fondly, because it took me met some great people, traveled to some fantastic countries that I would never have ordinarily gone to go and visit, and I had got some very, very fond memories of that time. But unfortunately, when you're 12 stone dripping wet, playing against people that are double your size and weight, injuries took their toll, and so after a few injuries, enough was enough, and I needed to get a proper job and work for a living, which I've done now, for the last 20 plus years, and now have wife and kids, live in London, and enjoying the lockdown life, which is kind of like Groundhog Day, but you've got to make the most of it, haven't you?
Yeah, definitely. I love that. Yeah, you've definitely got to make the most of it. We'll delve into that a little bit as we go into this conversation. So it is just wonderful to see you and to be able to talk again. Who knew that 30 years later we'd just be able to pick up a conversation as if it was just like yesterday. I think that's what we both sort of recognized before we even came onto this recording. So for anybody that is listening, obviously Adam and I know each other for many years, but we're going to sort of share this journey in this story of mental well-being, mental health. Which is the big topic. That's the conversation that we bring to these podcasts. So, Adam, your journey with mental health. So let's talk about sort of the last few years and how things have been for you. So what's been going on?
Sure, thanks. So I was fortunate in many ways, and I wasn't really, I didn't have much anxiety in my or sort of mental health issues for a large portion of my life. But at the last 18 months or so, got impacted by it, and it really took me by surprise, because I've not had any sort of challenges in that regard prior to sort of early 2019, and how it happened for me, from mental health from my perspective, was something that I was completely aware of and cognizant of, but it was something that happened to somebody else that I was reading about or watched about on TV or read about in the papers. It wasn't something that I really knew, and I had understanding of, but I didn't really empathize because I didn't know what I was empathizing with. But then a number of sort of circumstances that happened kind of in a very short space of time. Kind of close family and friends. There were some sort of health challenges that some close members of my family and friendship group were going through. I'm a dad of two. That brings its own trials and tribulations, as I know you can appreciate, Matt. And I'd also taken on a new job that was a sort of a promotion and a larger undertaking than I'd had up until that point, where I was managing a group of people. And all of those things kind of happened in a really sort of short space of time. And I was just, I look back at it now, but I was literally running around. I don't think I walked anywhere. I don't think I physically walked and breathed and took a break. I was literally running from school drop-offs to train to meetings, back home again to do school pickup, and then to do all the things that you then need to do as a dad, as a husband in the evening. And colleagues were sort of saying to me, hey, listen, it's been a while since you've gone for a run or been to the gym, why don't you come down this lunchtime? And I was literally putting those types of activities to the back of the queue, because I was in my head, I was like, I'm too busy to even think about doing that. I don't want to be seen to be going to the gym or those things. And so and unbeknownst to me at that time, this kind of ticking time bomb had been sort of set off, and I was completely oblivious and naive to the life I was all of a sudden living, and thinking that I could sort of fight those various fires and keep going at a pace that I was going at, and nothing was going to happen adverse to me. And then one day I sort of woke up feeling not myself. Had a presentation that I needed to give that morning that I was thinking about, that I'd been thinking about the night before, and probably not had a brilliant night's sleep. And then I was, in the shower getting ready, and again not feeling great. And as I was getting then dressed and ready to go to work, I just sort of sat down on my bed, laid back, and realised that I was getting quite, sweaty palms, sweaty forehead, and my heart was going 2 to the dozen. And I just thought, what's this? I've not felt like this before. What's this? And I'm kind of, I thought, okay, I'm okay. I can get up and carry on. And then I sort of tried, continuing to get dressed, thinking that it would pass. And it didn't, and then I started to get concerned. And the truth of the matter is, I thought I was having, at the age of 45, a heart attack. And so I kind of, that panicked me a bit. And so we've all our friends and people that I've been associated to that have had some, health issues in that respect. And so I thought, okay, maybe this is happening to me. I got checked out at the hospital, and came back with a clean bill of health, and actually sort of an undiagnosed, let's say, raised heart rate and what have you, but nothing more than sent home to sort of rest and recuperate, which I did for the rest of that day. After which I just sort of got up the next day thinking, okay, I'm fine now. I don't feel quite so bad anymore. I'm going to go into work. But little did I know that was basically going to set off a kind of chain of events, which I was then dealing with just very high levels of stress and anxiety that manifested itself for me personally in health anxiety, where I felt that at any given point or just around the corner, I might keel over and then not see my wife and kids anymore, and not be around anymore. That's genuinely what I felt. And to try and deal with that, I then did, I spoke very openly with my family and close friends, and I tried taking lots of evening walks around my house, but they were mainly to test my heart out, just to make sure that it was like, in good nick, which of course it was. That was like one of the body's way of telling me, mate, you need to put the brakes on a bit. So so that sort of, that was a real like wake up call. And it was, I can look back at it now, and I don't look back fondly at that period of time, but I can look back now and go, okay, I did experience something. It was very real. It was pretty serious. It didn't end up being with a serious outcome, from a health perspective, but for me, it was incredibly real. But I just, first of all, it taught me I have huge empathy and understanding and respect for anyone going through anything similar.
Yeah.
I know people have a whole array of symptoms and various ways in which these sorts of things manifest themselves. So mine is it's not unique by any means, but it's also not shared broadly by everybody. It can happen in different ways. But I learned a great deal about myself, and learned, and then started taking steps to correct it and get myself better. Yeah.
Wow.
Um,
We'll move on to the steps in a moment. I just want to take a quick second there just to say thank you for sharing that, and for the words you used and the way that you've described it. I think it's really important for anybody that's listening to sort of listen to some of those sort of realities of the feelings that you were going through, the thoughts that were going through your head. And one of the things with anxiety, of course, is this thought of catastrophizing. So it's always will make it feel like it's the worst thing. So the heart attack, and like you say, I found it fascinating that you said, at 45 years old, thinking you might be having a heart attack, but also then thinking about your children and your wife, and and this is sort of a reality, isn't it, that you got yourself towards, recognizing with all those things and those events that were going on that were all outside of your control as well, right?
Yeah. Oh, it was so real, and so kind of it potentially could happen at any minute, and it just became overbearing, and difficult for me to just kind of get to a position of being relaxed and calm. And then it started obviously impacting my sleep, and then that becomes a vicious cycle where the poorer night's sleep you have, the worse perhaps the next day. I then, when I did have a drink, I tended to drink more than I should have, which then put me back a few steps the following day. And so all the anxieties just came back stronger and more, and I was less able mentally to kind of get them back under control, because you're tired and because you're probably a bit jaded from having a few too many drinks the night before. So I found quite quickly that was not a good thing to be doing, because you just felt terrible, and I just had very, very high anxiety the next day. I mean, in terms of so there was it was a very challenging time that I just felt quite acutely, and couldn't immediately see how this thing was going to get better, probably because I've not experienced it before. Yep. With other illnesses and other ailments, it's a case of, you've got a broken leg, that's going to over time fix itself. And other things that I'd had were all diagnosed. I could see it, feel it, understand it, take a medicine for it, or do physio to get better. And it did get better. This, I couldn't see that it was ever going to get better. It seemed so set in.
Yeah. Wow. So how did you come through that to where you are now? So what happened? What was your catalyst for that change, or to change something that was happening?
Yeah, well, look, Matt, we hadn't reconnected when this was all happening. I kind of wish we had. That's not a plug for you, but this is basically just a recognition that society has done a tremendous job in making poor mental health a subject that people can feel comfortable speaking about and should feel comfortable speaking about, because it can impact anybody at any time. And so being able to refer to celebrities, famous people, reading newspapers and what have you, of people sharing their own personal journeys and personal stories, whilst prior to my episode, I perhaps had a slightly cynical view of those certain, maybe especially celebrities, but now I've completely changed that mindset, because I think it was hugely valuable to me to read those stories of people, and then everyday stories from other people, of their own challenges and working their way through it. Really good supportive family, thank goodness, and which was fantastic. And then some external therapy, where it was just talking therapy with somebody that just that you don't know, that's got no connection to you, that you can just talk nice and freely and openly with. And it was those steps which, over time, along with probably just being a bit more kind to myself in terms of exercise, diet, and not drinking excessively, it was those combination of things which got me out of it got me out of my sort of poor mental health period through to getting stronger and better.
Brilliant. Well, that I love that, and that's one of my favorite sayings from the podcast. Is I love that. You've come through this journey, and it's always an ongoing journey. So it isn't it's all fixed. Everything's it can slip quite quickly, and we've seen that, of course, across all of our mental health in the last year. So let's talk a little bit about the lockdown, COVID, and the pandemic, because I think it's a really important one to you've gone from working in the city, so right in Canary Wharf area, to now working from home, and how's that been for your mental health? How have you felt with that?
Yeah, so I've there's definitely been moments, but whereas before, when I hadn't ever experienced it before, I now recognize what it is, and I've got some, I mean, they're not there's nothing groundbreaking, but just it's exercise that's massively important for me. It's breathing, and recognizing when my breathing is perhaps just kind of where perhaps I'm feeling a little bit more anxious and it is kind of creeping in. Funnily enough, I haven't had any health anxieties around the current sort of health situation that we're all in, and so that hasn't actually come back. But I've also, what lockdown's done, if I'm looking on the positive side, is that you're not spending an hour and a half, 2 hours a day kind of commuting and traveling to and from work, and so that time you've effectively I've been able to use it, get out on the bike, get into a swimming pool when that was available, and that I've recognized as such a huge element of my body's way of whether it's just burning through energy or whether it's just, I find it hugely mentally cathartic, and yeah, that's been a massive help. I've changed jobs. That did help, because I just went from I'm sort of I am someone that if it's not working, I'm going to try and fix it however I can, and changing jobs allowed me to step out of that scenario. That's not to say that organization weren't able to support me or didn't want to support me or anything like that, but that was something, that was a decision that I took, to try and just sort of recalibrate and reset. But yeah, I've sort of found, through lockdown, exercise has been significant help.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for a lot of people, having the ability to still continue doing some of that exercise is so important. And we know as we record this, there's announcements being made around what we can and can't do, and restrictions and changes. And, you know, who knows what that means. We'll find that out, no doubt, in short time. But the biggest part of this is that conscious recognition that change, actually, we can make change happen ourselves. You know, so if you are feeling or experiencing anything that you think is not quite right and doesn't fit within what you believe is a positive part of your mindset, then we can change it. And I'm a big fan of recognizing change as being an enabler to be positive and have a positive mental health journey. And that's hard for some people, I get that. And I think it's important that you recognize all those key benefits of things like exercise, not drinking so much, maybe changing the diet. And, you know, we can have a long conversation about alcohol, because I stopped drinking alcohol in August, and I've seen some significant personal benefits for my mental health, you know, and some physical ones too, of course. You know, I don't know how you feel about those, but it's helped my sleep, it's helped my clarity of thinking, it's helped me not to feel so muddled in my mind, if that makes sense, you know.
I definitely. Another thing that really helped me, and this was a really a real moment for me. When it was the bin collection day, and going back to when I was I wasn't walking anywhere, and I was running around everywhere, right? And I was running from place to place, and I was always late for something, you know, or I was going to be late for something. And it was the bin collection day, and I hadn't put the bins out, and I had to run downstairs, get the bin, and the lorry had sort of already passed the house, and I literally, I grabbed the bin and just ran down the road with the bin, like towing it, and caught the bin lorry up, and then I started talking to the guy that was the refuse collector, and his name's Joseph, and he just looked at me in the eyes, and he just said, he basically just said, "Don't worry, mate, don't worry, it's all fine, it's all good." And I literally stopped dead in my tracks, right? And he just said about 3 or 4 things to me, and I was quite emotional, because I was like, like my whole, like everything was going. I was like, if I get this bin, and then I've got to go run off somewhere else. And this guy said a few words to me, and it completely brought me, it was so calming and such a nice thing to say. And I then bumped into him about 3 or 4 days later, and I crossed the road to go and say hi to him. And we shook hands, and then we had a much longer chat. And he shared me a bit about his story. I shared a bit more about my story. And we didn't know each other prior to this point, and we now see each other regularly. I look out for him, and he looks out for me when he's passing, and this, that, and the other. And this friendship has sort of come about completely out of nowhere. It's a friendship that I value, that it doesn't extend beyond these little exchanges that we have. But he was able to, I think, recognize in my persona and my state of mind when I was running off to go and catch up with him. He clearly saw in me that, with my suit and my tie on, like legging it down the road, somebody that needs, maybe a little bit of a, calm down, mate. You're going too fast. And so I don't think I can understate this enough, or I don't know if I understate, overstate, but this, he had a big impact on me, and I was hugely grateful for his. And my point being is that it was a transient conversation with a stranger, and it really helped. He didn't, he wasn't doing it, saying anything that was incredible or what have you, but it just meant a lot to me, and it really helped me. So that's an interesting story that happened. That
It's,
yeah,
I find it fascinating. What you've outlined there is something that's fundamental to all of us, which is this thing about human connection and connecting with empathy and connecting with you know, he didn't have to say anything. He could have just grabbed your bin and put it in the back of the lorry, but taking that moment just to connect with somebody, and you don't get any privilege for doing that. You just get the power of two people who are connected, and now you smile at each other, or you say hi, and I think that's something that we are missing a lot of nowadays, is that ability to do that, and to smile and see people. And of course, under the current lockdown restrictions, it is difficult, but that will come back. And it's that, be nice to each other. Kindness is such a key to the world right now. We have to use kindness to the nth degree. We have to really embrace kindness as a thought for everything. Kindness to others, kindness to self, kindness to the world around us, our community. And I do think that's such a fundamental part. I love that story. I think it's such a great. I was wondering where you were going to go with the bins, with the bin collection story, because I've trained people, and I say why, because I was sort of in my head laughing before you said how much we judge the story before we really know it. Was I train in my office here, and outside is where the bin lorries will come down past the house. And on the bottle collection day tends to be the day that I'm training. So all you hear is these bottles smashing into the back of the bin. And I have to make so many apologies. And I don't drink alcohol now, so it's not me. But it's sort of like, it sounds like I'm just got this abundance of alcoholic drinks or bottles going to recycle. So I was wondering if you can go down there, but your story was much better. Listen, we're coming quite close to the end of this now. I just want to ask you, what's next? What do you think in terms of sort of what would you like to do? Lockdowns, restrictions are released. What do you do? Where are you going? What are you going to do next?
Oh, look, I'm a outward going person that a lot of my energy comes from interacting in person with people. So I'm just looking forward to getting that going. The exercise, is I'm not going to set myself any lofty goals, but just keeping that going, and then just I guess enjoying just the simple things. Once the restrictions, and I don't think we're anywhere near them getting lifted, but once they do, I think it's probably just don't lose sight of the things that you really can appreciate that either come for free or are relatively easily attainable. Being able to catch up with your friends, being able to spend time outdoors freely, being able to make plans and what have you. So I think look, I think it's that's what I'm looking forward to, and maybe actually just kind of like trying to maybe make things a bit more simple in the future. Don't overly complicate life. I'd like to probably right now we're all online and we're all connecting via the gadgets. I think there's hopefully, once this sort of dissipates, we'll be off the gadgets, we'll be less reliant on them, and that will be I think hopefully a bit of a free everyone up, get the headspace in a good place, and hopefully come down and see your good self down in Basingstoke. Pop in to see my mum and dad as well.
Yeah, there you go. Living the dream. AJ, honestly, it's been a pleasure. One thing the reality is, if we hadn't have had this lockdown, if I probably wouldn't have launched a podcast, I possibly wouldn't have been in touch with you. We wouldn't be having this conversation. So I see a big positive in there, which is we've reconnected in some way, and we've had a chat for the last hour or so together. I know not all of it's been recorded, but it's just been amazing. I'm so grateful for all of these chats, for everybody that I have the opportunity to talk to, and as I've said in many things that I've already written and posted about, I love it. It's just a chat with people who are genuinely amazing human beings, and that's what you are. You're a great dad, you're a great husband, you're a great person, human, and everything else. And we should just normalize these conversations so that it doesn't feel we can't talk about it. We could be struggling in silence. So I just want to say a huge thank you, AJ, for having this chat with me and for connecting and accepting my connection request. Probably wondering what the hell this is all about. Where's this bloke come from? I haven't heard this name for a long time. Any final words from you, buddy? Anything else you'd like to say?
No, listen, thanks for the opportunity, Matt. I think what you're doing is it's a fantastic initiative. It was important before, but it's even more vital and important now, the work that you and your colleagues and team are doing. And yeah, I'm pleased to have spoken to you today and reconnected with an old friend. Let's not leave it another 30 years.
That's what I was just thinking. Yeah, I was trying to work out how long it will be. Like 75, 76 years old then. Brilliant. Thank you so much. As I always close out on these, just to say, this is a conversation that everybody can have. We can all have conversations with other people when we're feeling worried or concerned about things that might be going on in our lives. Always know there is somebody there to talk. Every conversation is an important conversation if you're struggling. The Samaritans exist today to help support conversations. If you feel you need a safe space to talk that's confidential, then please do reach out, talk to the Samaritans. The number's 116 123. You will get a friendly person at the end of the phone who just wants to listen, to hear your story and the things that you might be going through. So always know there's somebody there. From me to you, Adam, thank you so much for today. To everybody that's listening, please stay safe and well. And I look forward to the next conversation with the next amazing person. So thanks a lot, mate. I'll catch you soon. Cheers.
Take care, Matt.